And we are back again with even more new footage of Dek in Badlands and some other cool stuff. Yes, there's another clip that came out today and it shows a few things we haven't seen before. Dan goes on to say, after he completed filming Prey in 2022, which was also a new direction for the franchise, he was thinking about what to do next. Instead of jumping into a sequel to Prey, he chose to try something new with the animated movie, which is the first one for the Predator franchise, but also work on a film about a monster and a robot.
And then it was like, oh, I know some people that make robots.
So then he found a way to connect the Alien universe into this story by inserting the Weyland-Yutani Corporation through the use of Thia, because she is a synthetic but far more advanced, because this story takes place far into the future.
The Weyland-Yutani Corporation from the Alien franchise that has linkage to the Predator franchise.
There's a different version of the scene when Thia gets a device in her ear. This time, they added more devices on screen and even a CGI, which looks kind of silly. There's even text on screen that says new life form detected, species Yautja, potential threat to mission. I think I prefer the previous version without the eyeball on screen. I think that one looked better, because the eyeball just really sticks out in the picture. Thia has been on the planet Genna for a long time, and she knows the planet very well. She's got a lot of information that Dek could use on his journey. We have two new scenes here. This one takes place in a new room with one of the twin sister synthetics. The other one shows the interface to the mother system, but this one displays everything in a hologram. Since the story takes place further into the future, I guess that makes sense. You can hear Ripley calling out to Mother in the first Alien movie. That's pretty much like the ship's control system, like the AI. And in the fourth movie, Alien Resurrection, it was replaced by the Father. So this new scene is making another connection to the Alien franchise by including the Mother system. There's a new scene with a vehicle outside somewhere, and the part when the mech would walk towards the Kalisk, you can see the leg of the creature in the corner as it starts to back up. They talk about how in previous stories, synthetics were designed to blend in, but in Badlands, there's a battalion of synthetics that are used for military missions. These drone hunters are all armed and used for combat. A new scene shows this army of combat synthetics up against those vine creatures in the woods. They're all surrounded and shooting in many directions. The rest of the footage are scenes that were already shown in other trailers, clips, or TV spot videos. The story has a brand new idea for the Predator, making him the protagonist, and most of the focus is going to be on Dek as he makes his way through Genna to find the Kalisk and prove to everyone that he's not weak and he is not the prey. I also want to bring up another topic, since Dek does not have his biomask helmet for most of the scenes on Genna. I wonder what his vision is going to look like, because the biomask is supposed to give him different vision modes for hunting, so without it, are we going to see what his normal vision is like in the movie? Now that Dan has finished the animated movie and Badlands, he still has a plan to go back and continue the story of Njohrr for a sequel to Prey. But before this can happen, the animated movie and Badlands both have to do well. Every story with the Predator on film will make different physical changes. Not every story has to be the jungle hunter design. So Dek does look different, and yeah, it's a bit weird, but he is younger. And also, during the creation of Prey, they did explain why that Yautja looks different. Dan had some interviews back in June with different outlets, and he mentions why using the same design on a species kind of bugs him. He brings up the Wookiees and how they look the same with only small differences, which is why the Preds look different in each of his movies, and also saying that he was trying to stick to the base design of the Yautjas, but make a few changes here and there, and even trying to match their gear and weapons to that time period of their story. The next bit of update on Badlands is there was an MCM Comic-Con panel in London recently. The panel would include Dan Trachtenberg, Elle and Dimitrius. So here are the main topics they brought up. After Dan made Prey, he was thinking, not what could they make, but what they should make. Dan was more focused on giving us something new instead of jumping to a sequel to Prey right away. When you watch a movie, we sometimes fall in love with sidekicks or villains, and they don't always have movies about those characters. So that's how Badlands came up, a movie about a monster and a robot, which resembles the scene of Star Wars with C-3PO and Chewbacca. The personality of Thia is where some humor will come from during the story. She's also broken, but still shows empathy in how she navigates on the planet Genna. The other difference between them is Dek is the strong, silent type, while Thia is the person who talks a lot. Dimitrius had the role of Dek in this movie. He would take inspiration from the previous actors that took on the role as the Predator in the movies and also the Dark Horse comics. Someone said Dek looks like a young Broken Tusk, and they would ask Dan if Machiko is a character that he would like to bring in a film. Dan says they're both very cool characters. They're drawing inspiration from a lot of characters in the comics, but he doesn't think he's been interested in a direct reimagining of issues of comics. And in my opinion, I think that's okay. Even though some fans might want to see comic book characters on film, if they retell a story on film from the comics, you're going to know how it ends if you read it. Another option is to tell their story after the last time they appeared in a comic, which might work for a future film. Now, in previous interviews, Dan has said many times that he's more focused on making brand new stories instead of rushing to make a sequel to a previous story. Another question is for all three members. If the Predator could fight any other character, who would you pick? Dimitrius picked Thanos. Elle would choose Maleficent, and they also mentioned Ripley. And Dan would pick Lobo, but also adding that the spirit of Lobo is in this movie. They also brought up Judge Dredd, even though there was a comic book about that already. Another question for Dan was this: what was the hardest visual effect to create in Badlands? Dan said, trying to get the face right for Dek. A lot of scenes Dimitrius did was with nothing covering his face, so they had to replace it with special effects to match the emotion he was displaying in those scenes. After the questions were done, they had some cosplay on stage, which looks like the same one they used for Njohrr at the other Comic-Con events previously. This is the father of Dek and Quay. He just spoke a few lines in Yahuachua, and it ended there. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Leave a like on it, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.